Shri Ram Chandraya Namaha. Shastra Katha. We are covering Valmiki Ramayana in this series, and we wish to bring to you the stories from Valmiki Ramayana without leaving out any particular story. We won't be going into philosophy of it, and if you are interested, we have Hindi talks on Valmiki Ramayana, and there's also Bengali talk. We don't want to get into deeper aspects of philosophy in this series. Now, in the previous talk, we had mentioned how Viswamitra took Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman for the protection of his yagya and walked with these two. Now, you can just imagine the situation that Ram and Lakshman, two young princes, and they were barely 16 or so. And they had never seen the outside world. They were so dear to King Dashratha and to their moms. They are loved by people of Ayodhya, and they're they were just walking with a great sage. It's kind of there's a pathos in it, and they walked, and finally they reached Sangam, the meeting confluence of Ganga and Saryu. It's beautifully described in the original book. Next morning they got up and they started walking further. Sri Ramchandra was extremely curious about the new places that he was seeing. That is when he came across an extremely lonely place. Lonely place in the sense it appeared as if it was an ashram. That means some holy person had lived there, but no one lived there now. And Sri Ramchandra very politely asked Vishwamitra. And then Vishwamitra told him a very beautiful story. The story of how lust, a god of lust, was burned down there. The god of lust in Western culture is Cupid. In Indian traditions, is Kamdev. Another name is Kandarpa. His wife is Rati, which technically means sexual union. And that ashram belonged to Shiva, Lord Shiva, whose another name is Sthanu. Sthanu is one name that is used for Shiva in many different books. The background story and why exactly it happened is not mentioned in Valmiki's Ramayana. It simply mentioned that Shiva, who is also a great yogi, when we cover Shiva Purana, etc., we shall come across that aspect of Lord Shiva. And also when we see episodes like, we go through the episodes like Samudra Manthan. You might have heard of this fact that Hindu religion has millions of gods. Yes, millions of God, small g. But when it comes to capital G, we have Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. Actually, it's one God, three facets of the same God. However, Shiva is also a great yogi. And the stories of Shiva, along with Parvati, whom he married later, they're popular all over the country. Now, Shiva was deep into meditation, and Kandarpa, lust. He was mischievous. Those of you who know that lust and its armies like greed and avarice, anger, they can turn vicious at any time. So this Kama, Kandarpa, Wherever he went, he created havoc. Now he wanted to test the power of Shiva. Kandarpa came and started shooting his love arrows. These are mythological stories and they should be read the way they are. Shiva, he was so lost in meditations, in such deep meditation. Nothing happened to him. In other books, he described how the whole universe started trembling and people who had never known of lust, even they became lustful. But Lord Shiva, he felt nothing. Slight irritation. You can compare it with tickling the skin of a rhinoceros. You go and tickle the rhinoceros, he won't even understand. A rhino will understand nothing. So nothing happened to Lord Shiva's mind. But the slight irritation that made his mind deviate from his ideal was enough for him to open his eyes, and he saw that the god of lust, he was hiding behind the leaves of a mango tree and shooting arrows. Lord Shiva became angry, opened his third eye. The third eye is believed to be somewhere here. Actually, third eye means knowledge. If you want to burn down your inner enemies in the form of lust, greed, anger, etc., you need to open your third eye, eye of knowledge. And all these distractions will be destructed. And once Gandharva was destroyed, burned down to ashes, since there no god of lust is there, but lust has entered the heart of every individual. Now there is no external god who goes on shooting around arrows. It's present everywhere. And then Lord Shiva went away from there to Kailash, where he stays nowadays. The journey continued. Once again, there was some kind of a lonely forest. Actually, in those days, the population was pretty meager. And so the possibility of lonely forests, like when I was young, I had seen areas where farming was there, but barely anybody stayed. Population was not much. During my lifetime, population of India has become triple. So, and people now own many houses. Viswamitra started telling the story of this new lonely forest. Said initially it was an extremely prosperous city, or you can say city state. And this is a background story of Indra fighting with Vritrasur. We will narrate this story because this story is not narrated here. We will narrate this story when it comes. Now, Indra, who was the king of gods, he had committed some sin while killing his enemy. And the sin was not leaving him. Like when we commit something wrong, our sin doesn't want to leave us. We hear in Mahabharata that sin is like a calf moving behind the cow. Wherever the cow goes, the calf goes. Wherever we go, our sins go. Now, sin of Indra was not leaving him, and he reached this area, Maladkarus. And there were some great sages there who had performed intense tapasya. Because of that, the land had become extremely holy. And when Indra reached there, his sin left him. Now, we Hindus, we believe that if you go to a holy place, like if you go to Varanasi, Kashi, Prayag, Prayagraj, earlier it was known as Allahabad, you go to Haridwar, you go to any sacred place. Now we have Belur Math, is a sacred place. People have done tapasya here. And we had mentioned tapasya means to focus on one ideal and devote your entire life to that. And because of the positive spiritual energy coming out of you, the place becomes holy. Because when many people are thinking noble thoughts, their noble thoughts continue a field of nobility. And that entire area where these people are living, and sometimes if there is one single person, one great person, even he can perform this miracle. But imagine if so many people are meditating, then what will happen? Place will become extremely sacred. And persons who have committed sins, even they get purified. So we Hindus, we believe in this. So Indra blessed that this place will always be full of prosperity. And people were full of prosperity. And that's when something very sad happened. There was there was one demoness, Tatka. Tatka. She was originally a yaksha. Yaksha are demigods, or you can say semi-god. But her tendencies were extremely vicious. This is something very interesting about Hindu thought. They say that it doesn't depend on where you are born. Doesn't depend on which kind of family you have. It doesn't depend on how much wealth you have. But your everything depends on the nature you have. If you have a vicious nature, soon you will get into vicious acts and you will pay for all that. So this Tataka, although she was born in a very noble family, and in fact she was semi-goddess, but she had vicious nature, and because of her vicious nature, she was cursed by a sage. If there is something that we all should be scared of, is that noble person shouldn't get angry with you. If a good person, noble person, person with pure heart gets angry at you because of some misdeeds of you, because of some mischievousness, might harm you. And these things harm us much more than bullets and daggers. Now, Tatka was a wife of Sunda, who himself was now a demon, and he had a son Marich. They were vicious, and they started attacking this Malad and Karush, the land through which Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman were going with Viswamitra. They totally ruined that area. So, although a prosperous city state, simply town or city, whatever it was, now slowly it became a desolate place. And when this team of Vishwamitra, Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman, they were moving through that area, Tatka appeared. She was a demoness. She had to be killed. Vishwamitra asked him to kill them. But Sri Ramchandra hesitated. Because he had grown up learning from the great scholars and knew that killing a female, killing a woman is not good. So there was a kind of moral dilemma before Sri Ramchandra. And as we go through these stories, we shall see how many times Sri Ramchandra had to face moral dilemmas. And that's when Vishwamitra very famously said, Nahite stri vadakrite gana karya narottama. O prince, shouldn't hesitate in killing a female because After all, she's cruel, she's destructive. As far as destructive power is concerned, it has nothing to being male or female. Don't you worry. And then in his next verse, Valmiki says, through the words of Viswamitra, Nrishangsam Nrishangsam va Praja Rakshan Karanat. A king, a warrior. Now, of course, we don't have these concepts of king and warriors. Now we have soldiers and police. And sometimes we have special task force in India where they are tasked to neutralize a particular person who is into vicious activities. But in earlier times, there was a whole class of people known as Kshatriya. It was their duty to neutralize anyone who was indulging in vicious activities towards the weaker section. So Vishwamitra says famously that a king may have to take harsh steps at times. And sometimes these steps may appear wrong. But in the larger interest of the public, in the larger interest of the weaker section, a king has to take it. There's something very important. You see, sometimes, even today, we find that somebody who is in power has to take some steps, which apparently doesn't seem right, but in the larger interest of the state, that is country, and in the larger interest of people, you have to neutralize some. Although at times it may seem now we have human rights, etc., and they will start shouting, but Vishwamitra will not have anything of it. If a person is a threat to humanity, that person has to be neutralized. Whether that person is a male or a female doesn't matter. So, this we are having from somebody who wrote his work maybe around 3,500 years ago. Now, if you ask Western scholars, they will try to put it to maybe 2,200, 2,500 years, but it has to be at least 3,500 years old work. But in spite of Vishwamitra telling him, Sri Ramchandra was hesitant. So initially he tried to frighten her away. But Tatka became more and more vicious. And then Sri Ramchandra was really an adept. He was an expert at warfare. He shot a Shabdabhedi Vana. Shabdabhedi Vana is a sound detecting weapon. Sound detecting weapon, actually, the weapon doesn't detect sound. What happens is, you are such an expert at shooting arrows that you hear a particular sound and you aim at the source of the sound and hits. Shri Ramchandra's father, King Dashratha, he was also very good at Shabdabhedi Van. Shabdabhedi Van are considered to be extremely powerful. The arrow has to be extremely powerful. The person who shoots has to be extremely powerful. And the aim has to be fantastic. Like when we go through the stories of Mahabharata, we'll know that Arjuna, he was also very good at this. And actually, Tatka had created lots of illusions. And it was very difficult to find out where exactly Tatka was. Supposing we were fighting this demoness, we would have seen she was lost in clouds and dust and she was throwing stones, etc. etc. Sri Ramchandra, he was such an adept fighter. Tatka was killed. Seeing that, Vishwamitra was so surprised that God, such a powerful warrior, he is not even able to see his adversary, that is the demoness, and he kills her. Vishwamitra was so happy that He gave Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman, of course, every divine weapon that he had acquired through his tapasya. It was mentioned earlier how when King Dasharatha didn't want to send his two princes, Vasishtha had told that, don't you worry, Vishwamitra has the knowledge of all the divine weapons that are there in this world. And these divine weapons, they're like gods and they can be extremely deadly. So when Vishwamitra was handing over the charge of these divine weapons to Sri Ramchandra, by around 50, they are more potent and dangerous than atomic bomb and hydrogen bomb, etc. So all these divine weapons in the form of gods or human, you can say, they appeared before Sri Ramchandra and said that, okay, we are now in attendance of you. Now, mind it, this is not like a jinn in attendance. It's like, okay, fine. It's a we will do what you want. But these weapons are not slaves. That means you have performed some tapasya, you have performed some sadhana, you have performed some good acts. So these divine beings are happy with you. When you want, they will come. And as a favor to you, they will do what you request for. So they are not like some slave. These divine weapons are more like giving favors. So they said, okay, Sri Ramchandra, tell us what you want. Sri Ramchandra just bowed before them and said, you please go to your divine habitats, wherever you are from, and whenever I am in need, I'll remember you. To remember means you just utter a particular mantra, sacred formula, and that particular weapon will come in your hand. And that weapon will have huge destructive powers. Later on, we shall see when Sri Ramchandra indulges in different kinds of fights and battles, he uses these divine weapons. So now Sri Ramchandra and Lakshman, both of them, they were now masters of divine weapons which came to them from their teacher Viswamitra because of their competence. You are favored by divine beings only when you have competence. Like when we were students, we used to pray to God and we used to pray for good marks. And good marks eluded us. Why? God will favor. God will favor you only when you have the competence. Once you have the competence, forces of nature come and help you. So now Tatka was neutralized and the team kept on moving to a Siddhashram where Vishwamitra stayed. Now, Siddhashram where Vishwamitra stayed is considered to be extremely sacred, and there God, when he had incarnated as a dwarf, Vaman avatar, he had performed tapasya. Tapasya, Valmiki Ramayan's specialty is tapasya. Here you find everybody performing tapasya. Even the gods, when they incarnate, God, when they take up different forms, they perform tapasya. When somebody does something wrong, he or she performs tapasya to be purified. When somebody wants some favor, he performs tapasya to get that favor. So tapasya is the key of life in India in Hindu traditions. And then next day, Vishwamitra sat for his yajna. This yajna was directed towards the welfare of humanity. And the rule was once you sit for yajna, you cannot be angry, you cannot have any emotions. And that's when Marich and Subahu and the demon, they used to come and defile the yajna. They would throw stones, they would throw blood, they would throw impure things. And so the whole yajna, the sacred fire, and the sacred nature of that worship used to be destroyed, used to be ruined. So they came, and before they could do anything, By now, Sri Ramchandra had divine weapons. He himself had never used it. And then he used one of those divine weapons, Manavastra. It's just name. Manavastra is technique. If you translate it literally, it would mean human weapon, but it means nothing. It's just a name. Now, Manavastra, it was such a strange weapon. It kind of hit you in the chest. It doesn't cause any injury. And yet carries you far, far away. It's like as if something has hit you. Like when you hit a ball with your cricket bat, the ball flies away. In this case, the arrow is stuck with you and it's taking you away. And how far? Hundreds of kilometers. And Marich was so hard hit that much later we will see that he was so scared of Rama that he would get afraid if any word started with a syllable Ra. And Sri Ramchandra used Agneya Astra, the fire weapon on Subahu, and he was burnt to ashes. These were the divine weapons that he had acquired just then, and it was tested, and Sri Ramchandra became master of these divine weapons. The demons were completely neutralized. Viswamitra completed his yajna. It took around 12 days, and everybody at Siddhashrama, that is at the ashram of Viswamitra, was extremely happy. And Vishwamitra said that, look, you have come so far. Let us go to Mithila. Those of you who are interested in this can look at the map that has been created by extremely competent persons, and there are different maps, but wonderful. The journey of Sri Ramchandra from Ayodhya to Siddhashram to Mithila and back. You'll find it on internet. Now, these people, that is Vishwamitra, some of his disciples, Shriram and Lakshmana, they start moving towards Mithila, where the king was Janak, and he was performing a great yajna. The idea was that once they reach there, Vishwamitra will drop them off to Ayodhya. But many more strange things were to happen, as we shall see in our next narration. Thank you so much.